More Salad and Go locations are salad and gone. Hello and welcome to The Week in Restaurants, a look at the biggest stories of the week in the restaurant industry. I'm Jonathan Mays, Editor-in-Chief of Restaurant Business, and I'm here with Senior Technology Editor Joe Guskowski. Everybody is doing protein right now, so we'll get to the bottom of that whole menu trend. Some notable fat brands executives just received big bonuses and pay raises. We will talk about that particular issue. Later on Tech Check, Joe Guskowski talks about fake Reddit posts. But first, Joe, do you like salads?
Yeah, I like a good salad.
Right, really. Have you ever been to Salad and Go?
No, I have not.
No, that's probably because you do not live in either Arizona or Texas or Oklahoma. And now if you lived in Texas or Oklahoma, you've lost your chance. So Salad and Go is a drive-through salad concept. Actually, a pretty innovative idea. The idea is that they use these central kitchens to do a lot of the prep work that enables them to make salads that are fresh on site in drive-through only locations for a relatively low price. The concept is notable because they, a few years ago, managed to convince Charlie Morrison to jump from Wingstop, which it remains one of the most successful fast casual chains in the country, to what was at the time a chain that was little known outside of Arizona. They expanded very rapidly into Texas and Oklahoma. Charlie then left after a difference in opinion with the board of directors at Salad and Go. He is now over at Jersey Mike's. And since then, roughly Salad and Go has been closing all of those locations that they opened in Texas and Oklahoma. They closed a bunch of them last year. They closed the rest of them this year, which effectively means that all of that was for nothing. And really, it speaks to two things. Number one, a fast expansion, especially when you're jumping states like that, is a massive risk. You can really get beyond your skis. You have to, if you're going to open in a new state, I think it's a lot more difficult than I think people really appreciate. I'm sure a lot of restaurant executives would know a lot better, but it's just my experience. On top of that, you're opening a salad concept in Texas, which, I know that people eat salads in Texas, but that's not necessarily, I just think it's just a little bit less certain, versus a place like Arizona, but also really, one of the issues I have today is that salad is just kind of a challenging menu item, especially today, which will kind of lead into, what we'll talk about later. But, I just don't think that salad generates enough organic demand from a broad enough population to really support certainly that kind of growth. I know a lot of people really, really, really want to see a major salad concept, especially something along the lines of Salad and Go, where you're offering fresh food, fresh, healthy vegetables to consumers at a low price, which is theoretically the holy grail of the restaurant industry. But on balance, most consumers really do not want to go out to eat and eat healthy. That has always been an issue. When they want to go out, and I actually have some data to prove this, when consumers want to go out, even if they're eating healthy, they really kind of want to indulge. And we kind of see that a little bit. We saw Sweetgreen had some significant challenges last year. So it's just kind of a tough, I think salad is just a really, really, really tough category to be the focal point of a large scale restaurant chain. I'm not saying that salad can't work in some capacity, but you kind of have to keep, I guess, your expectations a little bit lower when it comes to salads. That's my perspective on that.
Yeah, especially for a fast food chain. I mean, I think you can make the salad argument for a fast casual in a downtown office district But it's harder to make the argument for a salad place on a strip next to McDonald's, Burger King, KFC, Wendy's. That's what fast food is to me. It's indulgent, burgers and fries and stuff like that, chicken. I just don't think salad is enough to support a QSR drive-through brand, especially growing that quickly. They're saying, they're going to stick to Arizona and kind of grow from there again. And maybe it makes sense for Arizona. Maybe there's more of a sort of a health movement there versus Texas.
Right.
But I certainly wouldn't go out of my way to get a drive-through salad if there were other options. So, I guess it's not that surprising ultimately.
No. We also might not be the target market. Joe, let's face facts. We might not actually be the target market. But yeah, again, and I think that the same actually kind of holds true with Sweetgreen. We think we saw that last year. Now I'll tell you, I think that I think what Salad and Go is doing is still really innovative. And let's see how they do after sort of paring back. Because one way or the other, it's clear that jump and that aggressive expansion in Texas did not work well enough. Either that or they just needed to be very patient and accept the fact that they're going to lose a lot of money for a while for that to work. But basically what we'd heard is that a lot of these stores were just empty, were not really doing very well and stuff like that. So I think it's an innovative concept. I also tell you about Sweetgreen, and Sweetgreen, has its own challenges. They're very different concepts. Sweetgreen is mostly a walk-in concept. It's an urban concept, like you mentioned, but its salads traditionally a lot more expensive. Its salads and bowls are a lot more expensive. Whereas Salad and Go offered a cheap item. I will tell you, I love Sweetgreen's food. It's nothing. I've never been to Sweetgreen and have regretted that decision. Even though I'm not a huge salad person on balance, maybe I probably should be, but I'm not necessarily. But I just think it's just a real challenged sector. It is never really, and the other issue is and this is going to lead really nicely into the next thing we're going to talk about, which is protein. I think that consumers' views on health change all the time, and we have seen a massive sea change in the last couple of years on how they view health. And salad's not it. It's just weird. So tell me about the protein stuff.
It's not salad anymore. It's meat. It's protein. If you thought protein was the big menu trend of 2025, we were just getting started, because in this first week of the new year alone, we've had at least 12 brands unveiling protein forward items, and not in subtle fashion. They're putting the word protein front and center on these items, and it's everyone. It's pizza chains. Blaze Pizza has a protein pizza, which means there's a lot of meat on it. Coffee chains. Dunkin' has a line of protein drinks. Our colleague Pat Kobe did a big story on this week. Everyone should check it out just to understand the scope of this. Also this week, the USDA came out with its new nutrition guidelines, and protein like meat and dairy is up at the top, and whole grains are now at the bottom. But it doesn't even have to be meat. Jonathan, I did some show and tell today. If you're viewing us, you will see I'm holding up a bag of protein rolled oats from the grocery store. I have a protein pasta here. So you can get protein anywhere now, and brands are putting it on the packaging, and you feel like you're going insane at the grocery store now, because protein isn't that hard to come by, honestly. It's convenient for restaurants because they already serve protein. So you can just add some extra protein to a bowl or a pizza or a sandwich and call it a protein power lunch. The question is, I guess, is this just a fad that's going to blow over as we get away from New Year's resolution season and all that, and as consumers get saturated with all these protein items? Or is this something that's going to actually, maybe drive some traffic for restaurants this year?
I think the answer is to that question, both questions, is yes. That's what I'll say. First off, I mean, yeah, I think it'll probably help drive traffic. I mean, there's a reason they're doing it. There's a big reason. I mean, the dietary guidelines have changed, and so we have the federal government now agree with it or disagree with it. But the fact that the federal government is now pushing these guidelines with protein at the top is notable. So when restaurant chains, especially this time of year, want to be seen as offering healthy items, and so that means that means protein is pretty crucial. And I imagine that, and we've seen that in the past when we've seen trends like this, where consumers will get it. They just kind of generically think protein is healthy, and they'll get it. And it's just another another example of restaurants being really innovative, responding to consumer needs and things like that. I'm not going to be lining up for any of these protein items. I get plenty of protein in my diet, in my opinion. But I think it'll generate some sales, certainly in the short term. I also do believe it's a fad, and historically, that's what we've seen in any health is always, and that's it. Really does get back to the salad issue. Health is a really, really complicated topic. It's more complicated than it really should be. I honestly do believe that the concept of what it actually is healthy is a lot more simple than we tend to make it. But I mean, I've been covering the industry for 20 years. I've been alive for 55, and my lifetime, these fads come and they go. For the longest time, we were cutting back on fat. And then we kind of realized that, fat isn't specifically the enemy, that sugar is more of a problem. And then, we've had, now we have gluten, we have carb, people cutting back on carbs, which we've had off and on for years, where people would cut back on carbs. So, like if you just look at Subway's history, for instance, Subway for years was able to tout itself as a healthy option. And then suddenly people started cutting back on carbs, and they lost that business of people who consider a foot-long sandwich healthy. But, so, I mean, these trends just come and then they go. I think a lot of this really depends on how long the leadership of Health and Human Services is still there, whether that ultimately changes, because there's some other elements there that, it's not necessarily a slam dunk for me that this continues over the long term, because it is relatively controversial, the dietary guidelines and some of the other things that they do, and you just never know who comes in, later on. But beyond that, I mean, you just don't know what's going to come up in 2 years, and then suddenly people are changing. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we weren't really thinking about protein all that much. It's only come up in the last couple of years. I mean, I know that there have been people for a while that have been touting protein and but it's a fad. My strong recommendation for any restaurant operators out there is to just, be mindful of that. And you have to be flexible. You have to be flexible and be ready, because once these trends change, you might actually, the menu that you spent so long developing might be obsolete. And that's what ends up happening. Focusing on health at all is often a recipe for destruction in the restaurant space. It's one thing if you're, in the consumer packaged goods business, and, you can offer different versions of the product. But if you build your restaurant chain around health, that can be a challenge if those views of health really change. The one thing that I'll just be mindful of, and I think the protein thing does actually allow for this a little bit, But I'm doing a story right now on this study by Alvarez and Marcel, and we'll be talking with them on a future episode of my podcast, A Deeper Dive, where 70% of consumers want both comfort food and healthy. Consumers today are not willing to sacrifice comfort and indulgence for health. That is a really difficult. That is a really difficult needle to thread, and so ultimately, we get back to the issue of salads. Consumers fundamentally want to go to restaurants and indulge, and ultimately, if that's what you're offering, you're probably better off. And then if you are going to go the health route, you're just going to have to be flexible in terms of your offering, because these trends change all the time. Yeah. So that is my perspective. Speaking of changing, actually, this has nothing to do with changing, but Fat Brands, Joe, is in the news again. They are giving retention bonuses to a trio of executives. One of them is CFO Kenneth Quick, $500,000. The other two are Thayer and Taylor Wiederhorn, the sons of Fat Brands founder Andy Wiederhorn, were each getting $550,000, effectively to stay until June 30th, in case the company files for bankruptcy. And it does mention filing for bankruptcy. They are also getting $400,000 raises apiece. Two things on this. Three things, actually. First, retention bonuses are very common. Not uncommon. On balance, not really a problem. You can make an argument that a company on the verge of bankruptcy, facing some of the issues that they are having. As a reminder, Fat Brands, the trustee on Fat Brands bonds, has called the loan, essentially demanding payment in full. Currently owed about $1.4 billion. It's probably a bit more than that now because interest keeps building. The company was unable to make its quarterly bond payment, at least as of October. And, there are all kinds of controversies, legal actions going back and forth between shareholders, franchisees of Hurricane Grill and Round Table Pizza. Two Fat Brands concepts have sued the company, accusing them of raiding the marketing fund and not marketing. The company missed a payment to a marketing consultant, which left Round Table Pizza without advertising for several months. When those funds are supposed to be just used for marketing and not for anything else. So a lot of issues with Fat Brands. The possibility of bankruptcy in any company would ultimately, look, if a company was facing bankruptcy, you don't want your executives to leave. Any one of these guys could bolt because hey, this company is crumbling around me. I'm going to get out while I can, whatever. So that's why this happens. It's very common. Almost every situation we see something like this. Now, you can make the argument that with the bankruptcy filing that maybe they shouldn't be spending this kind of money, whatever, but it's not uncommon. It's more common in a sale process too. If a company puts itself up for sale, you often do see these sorts of retention bonuses. You can make the argument or not. Fat Brands is a controlled company by the Wiederhorn family. The Wiederhorns and members of the family and insiders tend to dominate the company board. They own the bulk of the shares, that sort of thing. It is what it is. But that said, it just looks bad. It looks bad. Without any question. It looks very, very bad to that fact that two of the people getting these bonuses happen to be the sons of the founder. And, so we're going to be at RCR next week, and guess who is representing next week? Your
Fat Brands.
Yeah. So that will be must-see television at ICR next week. And Andy, by the way, just was named CEO of Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
Another
congrats to him.
Yeah.
He's got two CEO jobs right now.
Yeah.
So he's busy, and yeah, it just all seems very brazen. I mean, you outlined some of the issues they're having, and to give your two sons basically doubled their salaries. It just it doesn't look good.
Right.
Um, but it's
Doesn't.
sort of par for the course for the way they operate, it seems.
No. Yeah. It is a company that, for lack of a better term, has traditionally been very aggressive on the financial front, and then the way they operate. Um, Wiederhorn as CEO of Twin Peaks is, I mean, Twin Peaks is basically the jewel in their crown. I don't think there's any question about that. Twin Peaks is the company that they felt strong enough to spin off in an IPO. One of their plans to pay off debt is to raise funds using Twin Peaks. I don't know, what the potential is for that at this particular point. I know they filed something, but I think it depends on on Twin Peaks getting to a stock price that they're not at right now. So, it's it is a very challenging situation over at Fat Brands. And look, at the end of the day, what happened here is this was a company that for a long time, and cast aside, the questions about the Wiederhorn family and a lot of the controversies there, with involving, they were charged in a $47 million loan scheme. Those charges have been dropped. They've also are reaching a settlement with the SEC on civil charges. So cast all those sorts of things aside. Cast all of the accusations of transfers and things of that aside for a minute. And but what we have here is a situation in which a company, in many respects, far more vanilla than it might seem. This is a company that for a long time was operating essentially. It basically shopped on the budget rack for restaurant chains. It would buy restaurant chains that were tired, struggling, franchise brands that well past their prime, or just never really were able to get anywhere. They often use creative financing to get there. There was this very notable high interest loan from Sardar Biglari to Fat Brands to effectively enable them to refinance some debt. And then all of a sudden, they merged with Fog Cutter Capital in 2020. And then they just start buying up nearly about $900 million worth of restaurant chains. They bought Twin Peaks. They bought Global Franchise Group. They bought, they bought Fazoli's. They bought, Johnny Rockets in a series of deals worth $900 million, and apparently did this at the peak of the market and using a ton of debt. And in the years since then, the restaurant industry is just a lot more difficult. They were able to do this because of whole business securitizations, which enable companies to guarantee debt using future revenues. The franchises love these things because you can get cheaper debt, and then royalties paid by franchisees tend to be more profitable. There are fail safes that can protect the bondholders, so enables companies to get cheap debt. They essentially just loaded themselves up with very cheap debt at the peak of the market. Afterwards, valuations in the restaurant industry have come way down. Sales have struggled. Fat Brands, collective same-store sales have been down for at least 8 straight quarters. Twin Peaks for at least 4 straight quarters. The costs are not decreasing, so it is the cost for operating many of these companies. It's a lot more expensive, and so at some point, this debt comes due and it gets difficult to pay it off. It is far more vanilla than it actually seems. That's kind of what their challenge is. That is what I will say until I'm blue in the face, Joe. and then you add this sort of thing on top of it, and it's not just double their salary, it's actually triple their salary if you really think about it. But they're also, the value of whatever stock they own is greatly diminished because the stock value is worth nothing, just a few cents per share. So, but it ultimately gets back to this whole issue. And it was the issue with Hooters, and it was the issue with TGI Fridays, and it is an issue with Fat Brands. Whole business securitizations have gone way too far in the restaurant industry, and they need to be rolled back. Too many companies. It is just one more sign of very highly aggressive and very dangerous financing instruments in the U.S. financing industry. And it is one that tends to be underappreciated because we've now had we have 2 bankruptcies and possibly a third involving the aggressive one. So that is my rant on Fat Brands, Joe.
Strikes.
Yes, there you go. So coming up next, Joe is going to talk about a fake Reddit post and what that means for views on delivery. But first, Spoons is going to give you an advertisement, so stay tuned for that.
Keep up with what's happening in the restaurant industry with Restaurant Daily.
I'm NRN Managing Editor Leanne Zinsmeister.
I'm RB Managing Editor Heather Lally.
We bring you a specific look of what's happening in the restaurant world from brands like McDonald's, single unit mom and pop shops, and hot button issues like inflation, tariffs, and more.
Start your day right with the Restaurant Daily podcast every weekday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And be sure to subscribe to never miss an episode.
Happy New Year and welcome to Tech Check, where I, Joe Guskowski, talk really fast about one big topic in restaurant tech. This week, can we learn anything from a fake Reddit post? You probably heard about the viral post about restaurant delivery in which a supposed developer, one of the delivery apps, made a number of shocking allegations, including that the app assigns delivery drivers with desperation scores to determine how little it can pay them. The post sparked immediate backlash from both delivery workers and consumers and denials from delivery companies. But now it looks like it was a hoax created with the help of AI. Lesson number 1, don't trust everything, maybe anything you read on the internet. Fake though it was, the post clearly struck a nerve with folks who feel as if delivery companies are taking advantage of them. And it is true that the low-margin delivery business model relies upon paying gig workers as little as possible. So while the post may have been a big nothing burger, the reaction to it exposed some real issues with delivery.
And that should do it for the Week in Restaurants, which was edited, as always, by Spoons. You can find this and other episodes of the podcast on our website at restaurantbusinessonline.com, but please subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. For Joe Guskowski, I'm Jonathan Mays. Thank you for listening.